Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into the practical side today in this chat, but it's interesting you talk about the first time you went to Italy and that feeling that you had. There was some kind of magnetism that either made you want to, spend the rest of your life there or buy a house or whatever it was. And I kind of felt the same way when I first went to Italy. The first time I went was in 1994, so a very long time ago. And I always had an affinity with the place, but I definitely had that desire to have something in Italy. It didn't sort of...
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it didn't manifest itself in necessarily wanting to have a house there, but it certainly was some form of magnetism that kept me coming back. And I think, I was born in the UK, and when I land in London, at Heathrow Airport, I always get some form of emotional, there's some form of weird emotional connection. And now I have that same thing now that we own a property in Italy, and when we go to Abruzzo, which is the region where we bought the property, I start to get that same feeling of that my DNA is somehow intertwined with the country.
Mm. Yeah, so I guess you just brought into my dream, and it's a shared dream that we accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about that, the pride, and I don't like pride as an emotion. I think it can be a very negative thing. But for me, and I know with you as well, a big piece of why we're proud to have a place in Italy comes from just the amount of work that's required, not just the physical work, but that the starting of something that is a dream that you then put a strategy in place and you start to become methodical. But the challenge is the process, right? So how you go through this, how you actually buy a property in Italy. And if we look at sort of the first step was really agreeing, right? And me sharing your dream and genuinely putting some time frames around it that we wanted to do it. And you alluded to COVID. I mean, COVID was great because I think it gave everyone in the world a chance to pause, reflect, and you would hope take action on either making changes or building a new pathway. What was the first step that we took? Like how would you describe that first step that we took to really, after we'd agreed that we were going to do this, buy a property in Italy, that we took to start finding a place and moving forward?
We started searching, right? And we didn't really have a specific place to search. I know Tuscany, Rome, Cinque Terre, but none of those places were what we wanted. We didn't want a touristic town or city. We wanted something that would give us the lifestyle that we have now, away from everything and nature. So Abruzzo was, like, I would say serendipity, because both of us I had never heard about Abruzzo before.
I don't think anyone's heard about Abruzzo.
Anyone knows it. Yeah. So just for the people who haven't heard, it's our town is 2 hours from Rome. It's on the border of Lazio, which is where Rome is. And we have the mountains and we also have the sea. So it's a great place. It's very away from the touristy area, and beautiful nature, simple, raw, everything that I wanted at that point, and I still do, because it's about getting away from Dubai and being that pure, raw nature. Skiing, going to the beach, 40 minutes away, we can go to the beach. We started looking very randomly, right? And we looked at north of Italy, different places, and I don't really know how we got to that point where we chose Abruzzo and that little town, Rocca Morici. It has 900 inhabitants.
942.
900,
and
probably
and
not
with the
a few new kids. It was very random and very... I tend to believe, I'm very rational for many things, but I tend to believe that was one of those things that are meant to be, because we bought a house online. We did not see it. We managed to get to the house 3 months later. During COVID, we couldn't travel, and it was the house that we needed. So it was a lot of luck. I believe it was meant to be. We did our research and we just prayed that it was not a scam, that we would get there and actually find the house. So in my view, that's how it went. We didn't really have a lot of planning on location. But I guess when we look through, I think we just probably researched nature. I don't know what the search was, but then we found a few houses in Abruzzo, and also they're very affordable. And you can renovate a beautiful home and for a lot less than if you're buying in Tuscany. And for someone who is buying online and not quite sure if it's going to work, it's better to be on the safe side than spending a whole lot of money on a house. So I guess, yeah.
I think you can draw some parallels with dating online, right? And it's you never quite know what you're going to get, but it's important to know what you don't want.
Yeah.
And, if you look at, we knew that we wanted Italy, and we aligned on that, which was really important. We aligned on our budget. And to be very clear, it wasn't a €1 property, which I think can be very challenging, although there's a lot in the media about that. But fundamentally, we had a budget. We knew we wanted to be in Italy, and we knew what we wanted and we knew what we didn't want. So I think for anyone who's looking to do that, because, Italy's geographically, it's not a huge country, but it's very diverse. So I think you can be quite specific around those wants and dislikes. And ultimately, we used an application, I think it's called ID or ID or something like that. I don't know. It's a Europe-based home finding app, and there's thousands of properties, as there is in Italy. There's tens of thousands of properties that are listed for sale, many of which have been there for years and never sold. And a lot of properties that are not recent or relevant. But what we actually, from what I recall, we were, like you said, we were looking up north. But what really jumped out to us was when we started to put the filters of nature, the price filters, and also we visually were looking at the types of properties. And you saw a place with a fireplace, this big, beautiful fireplace. And that was something that sort of caught your eye. And it was actually the fireplace that drew us in, but it so happened that it was a beautiful farmhouse with, plenty of land, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a really good piece. Know what you want, know what you don't want, get online. But that kind of takes me to the next point is there's actually a lot of trust. You said scams, right? I didn't feel that there was any scams in Italy or through these websites, but you have to be very careful if you're buying online because what you see is not always what you get.
Yeah. In our case, what we got was much more than what we expected, right? We didn't know there was land. We didn't know there was downstairs. We didn't know there was a nut grove, walnut grove. So all those things were like bonus when we got there. But yeah, we were quite lucky.
Again, it's like dating, right? You go on the date, but then you find out they're a billionaire and and super gorgeous. We were very, very lucky. And, a couple of sort of tips from my part. The real estate agent seemed, although they only spoke Italian, they seemed very reputable. They had other properties listed. They had referees who were English speaking. So they provided us people that they'd sold properties to before. They were very responsive and very professional, if not a little bit slow, but that's Italy. And eventually, the other piece of advice I think we can give is you have to actually, there comes a point where you have to take the plunge. And for us, it was paying the deposit, right? And I remember sending that money and, it was not an insignificant amount of money, but it wasn't enough to break the bank at the time, right? So there is an element of risk in buying a place in Italy. And I believe even to this day now, owning a property, you have to be prepared that you're never going to get that money back.
Yeah. Because selling a house is not easy. There's thousands and thousands of houses for sale. And for people who are not aware of the situation, those towns that have old houses for sale, most of the young people leave Italy, leave the country or leave the small towns to go study and work. And then you have like a lot of houses that are abandoned and families, the nonnas and the grandparents don't have enough money to restore them and to renovate them. So they're just every other house is for sale. So
Yeah, there is no shortage of housing stock in Italy, and a lot of it is decrepit.
Yeah.
There are some jewels that you have to sort of rummage through to find them. But coming back to that point of being mentally prepared in buying a property in Italy, I think that firstly you have to be prepared that once you pay that deposit, that the next stage of the process is likely going to be very different to how you've purchased a property in another country, and it's likely going to be difficult, which we'll get to in a moment. But secondly, that once you make that decision to purchase a property in Italy, you can effectively say you're never going to see that money again. So you have to be prepared to be purchasing the property not as an investment, but as a property that you will have for multiple generations to come. And you know, we have a great community in Italy of friends, expats and locals, but the expats, the ones who are truly happy from what I've seen, the ones who have not gone through, you know, trauma and issues and challenges, are the ones who've had that mantra in their mind is they're all in. Mm-hmm. They, even if it's a second home or a holiday home, they're all in mm-hmm. on this place, and they're not expecting to get a return on their investment.
Yeah. And accept and understand the difficulties, right? And being patient, because there were a lot of stones on the way and difficulties. And it's just, you really need to want it really bad, because it's not an easy process. It's a journey, right? It's a journey. And when I say I'm proud, I'm talking about all of those things that we made it happen. And nowadays it's a place where we go and get away from everything, and our kids love it. So it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at that, you know, you talk about those challenges on the way. I mean, the first, outside of we found the place, we paid the deposit, and putting COVID aside and the nightmare of the challenge that we had to get to Italy to settle on the property within a time frame. We had to go via London because you couldn't fly from the UAE to Italy direct. But that's nuanced to that particular time, you know, with COVID. But one of the interesting things is we went through the whole process. We saw the place. We were incredibly happy with the property. Like you said, it was more than we could ever have imagined. But the problem started from when we actually settled on the property, right? And we found out immediately. So I settled as a New Zealand resident. Upon settlement, we found out, and once we went to start getting our residency, which we'll go through as well, is that as a New Zealand citizen, as a New Zealand passport holder, I was not allowed to own property in Italy. And that was after buying the house and settling on the house.
Name on the document.
On the document, yeah. So I think that's the reason I share that anecdote, is that the recognizing that the information that you get from the Italian legal system, from the real estate agents, etc., is not always correct. Not because they're trying to mislead you. Yeah, they're not trying to mislead you. They just don't understand the nuances. And to be fair, the federal, local, commune, the laws are very complicated in Italy as well. Thankfully, we managed to navigate that through using my other citizenship to be able to purchase the property and then get our residency in Italy. But that was another great challenge. So we get the property, right? We're there in Italy. We're all in. We've paid the money. Next challenge: utilities, gas, power, water. How long were we in the place without running water and electricity?
2 months, I think.
2 months. Yeah. 2 months of we got the water going, and we were having cold showers, I think, for at least 3 months.
Yeah. Everything is a bit slow and difficult.
Yeah. So getting the electricity connected was extremely challenging. I think we had to stay in a rented property about 40 minutes drive, let's say 30 minutes drive in, where was that? Chieti, one of the local towns. So we had to stay in a different town, and every single day drive to the hardware store, get the paint, get the pieces that we needed for the next day's renovation, go to the property, do the work on the place.
We renovated ourselves, right? That's another piece, because, well, I didn't know we were going to renovate it ourselves. When you said, let's renovate the house, I thought, well, we're going to get people to help us, but no, we did it ourselves. And I think part of that was that we didn't speak the language, we're still learning, and it's really hard to get good, how do you say it? Good
Tradespeople.
tradespeople to do it for you at the time that you want. So you don't want to, extend that to a year. We finish in 3 months, and in Italy, you need to have a bit of patience, right? Because they're not going to be ready when you need them, and there's always something. So we kind of, okay, let's just do it ourselves. And it was probably the best thing.
Yeah, and there's a balance that you're always treading when you're trying to do a renovation yourself versus getting professionals. And I think in Brazil you call it gambiarra, right? Which is the process of kind of pulling everything together to just make it work. We didn't want that for this place. We wanted to be able to renovate it properly. Thankfully, I've done that before a number of times, so there was some guidance that we could use. There was some structure, but it was very, very difficult. So every day, because we had no electricity, we were driving in 30 minutes, go to the local fermata or whatever it is, which is the hardware store, picking up the things that we needed for the property, doing the work, and then heading back. And, I can think of maybe 1 or 2 times where we used tradespeople. The first time the guy turned up and complained because it was a Sunday and his mother was cooking food and he was missing the football match, and he was
in a hurry.
He was in a hurry and he was complaining because we didn't have the manual for the gas, the gas infrastructure. And then secondly, it was when we had a leak in the ceiling in the roof. And the guys didn't fix it properly anyway, right? And the property is still leaking to this day, which is fine. It's something you just deal with.
Yeah.
But that process of cultural, what would be the right word? Cultural acceptance in Italy, I think, is another big piece that's kind of that next step, right? Where you've got the property, you're doing the work, you're starting to become part of the community. How would you describe, say, the Italian culture of that revolves around getting a property, right? The legal system, getting your residency, getting tradespeople to be able to come in and help you. How would you describe that whole process?
Very confusing. Very confusing. I remember I spoke to probably 4 or 5 lawyers to understand that process that you've been describing. And I got different information from each and every one of them, not because they were not doing their job well, but because they truly believed that was the right information. So a lot of patience involved. We have been to the questura. I lost.
So the questura is the police part that handles immigration, correct?
Yes, something like that. So we had to travel to another city, go to the questura. You have a booking, an appointment, and you still line up in the sun outside, and sometimes they don't see your appointment and they tell you to come back the following week. Then the following week, there's some kind of holiday and it's closed. Another thing.
True story as well. We've experienced that.
The websites don't have the right information. So you never know when things from restaurants to questura to anything, when they're open, they're actually open, and when they're closed. So a lot of times it's a surprise. You go to a place and it's closed. We got wrong information there. I remember one day crying, leaving the place crying because I was told I would have to go back to Brazil and re-enter Italy. And that was not a thing I could do at that moment. So it's very, very frustrating. So I would say a lot of patience and trying to understand as much as you can and talk to people who have gone through the process. Because the other thing is, this is our story. Each one of our friends have a different story, right? Going through the same process. So it's all different from each person. It's also about the commune that you're in. So all those little towns that are called commune, and our one is Rocamorice. And the commune, the how do you call the main office, right? Where the mayor,
the commune,
yeah. It's basically they choose if they want to have you in the town before anything else, before you go through the whole paperwork. So you go speak to them, you bring your paperwork, your story and everything. I remember I had a folder full of pictures and documents to show that we were partners, we were not married yet.
How much you earn, what your insurance is, everything.
Look at anything. They pretty much, we were like, they liked us and they were like, yeah, it's okay. And
they spent most of the time asking if we were married and where is your ring and what kind of ring you had.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot about being liked by the people from the community, the community, and also being lucky because you have to go through that process before anything else. So
And keeping in mind, this is after you've purchased the property as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of chicken and egg. So you've already paid your money, you've committed, you've purchased the property, you've found out you're not allowed to purchase the property. You've then gone and sorted that out. So you do own the property. You've got your electricity, you've got your gas, you've got your power, you've got your water, you've renovated the property, but you still don't have residency because you have to be liked.
Yeah, and you have to get something called the codice fiscale, which is an ID, like a number that you need for pretty much everything from buying a fridge to, you need that number for everything, right, before you get your residency. And for some reason, that number doesn't match. A lot of times we try to go online and buy from IKEA to Amazon, and it doesn't match. It says the number is wrong. So for some reason, the system didn't recognize. So we went through all that, and then we didn't have a fridge. We couldn't buy a fridge. We couldn't get the fridge delivered because that number didn't match. So there's a lot of those little things that really complicate the whole process.
Yeah, so that fiscal code is your first step, right? So I think we even got the fiscal code before we settled on the property. So you get your codice fiscale, then you get all of those pieces together because again, you need your codice fiscale to have your electricity, etc., etc. So it's interesting. I think there's 3 levels. I may be getting it wrong there, but there's a local, which is your commune. There's your state, which would be Abruzzo. I'm probably messing up the terms, or your region. And then there's a national level. So there's these sort of 3 layers of bureaucracy that you have to go through. And, you explained being liked and being accepted by the community, we were very lucky because Rocca Marucci is amazing and they're great people and we got on with everyone. And so that was really helpful, right? Then the codice fiscale is at that kind of regional state level, which is your kind of tax number. And then the questura, which is your, working with the national, that kind of carabinieri and working with the police system. And so, having to go through those 3, and also the information that you get from, say, a local level, to your point, what they would tell you doesn't match up with, say, what the state level is or the national. It never does. Yeah. And that's, it's an interesting cultural experiment going through that with Italy, because you start to understand that Italians, and this is a mass generalization, outside of football or rugby, where they are very nationalistic, they see themselves regionally, and thus you get these kind of different rules and different approaches, especially at a local level than you would at, say, a state level. And they're very Abruzzans are very proud to be Abruzzo, right? And that's something I think that we have learned to love as well and embrace, because it's great. It's great going to Rome, but it's nothing like living in, say, a rural area in central Italy in the mountains, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, but there's so many different cultural differences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another world.
Yeah, Abruzzo. Would you recommend Abruzzo to anyone?
No, no.
Why?
I would recommend Abruzzo for people who really like raw nature, who are open to have that experience. Now there's no COVID anymore, so of course people don't have to buy a house without being there first. Go experience, because the people who live there, like, everything is very different from Tuscany or from Milan or from Rome, right? It's a very specific area. The food is different. The people are different. It's very rural, very raw. That's how I would define it. So it's not for everyone. Absolutely not.
And when you say no, you also don't want people to move there because there's no one there, right?
No, I don't. I don't want tourists there. I'm very happy that we were the first ones. I think there's another 2 couples from Belgium. There's not many tourists. Most people there don't speak English, so we really need to learn Italian and speak the way we can to get the message across. We don't spend as much time there, otherwise we'll be speaking a lot better. But yeah, I don't think it's for everyone.
Yeah, Abruzzo is definitely not for everyone. And I mean, it's as rural as you can possibly get, I think, in Italy, right?
Yeah, if you think about, we live in a national park, right? Inside a national park. And I think we're the last house or one of the at the end of the national park. So we walk out of the house with a stick and
Bear spray.
because, you're in a national park, you're in their environment and you're the intruder. You have bears, you have foxes,
Wolf.
and boars, yeah, chingalis.
Chingalis.
What else?
So
Wolves, yeah.
Lupo.
So it's quite interesting. It's an interesting place if you're aware of that and happy to be in that type of environment. And it's quite dangerous too.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think one of the scariest things around where we live is the dogs, right? And this may seem like a really stupid thing to say, but the dogs are terrifying.
Abruzzo dogs.
The Abruzzo dogs, yeah. And cani abruzzesi or something like that. I don't know. There's a proper term for them.
Cani abruzzesi, yeah. They're the big white dogs, and they look after the sheep, and they're very territorial, and they can get very mean. So passing through the roads when they're looking after the sheep, they, for no reason, they can attack you. So it have to be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay, it can be very dangerous.
Yeah. And you have to be very careful.
You have to be very careful. Even talking about it makes me nervous.
Yeah, it's pretty anxious. And I mean, to the point that, just walking out of our house, just a 2-minute walk, right? And there is one way that we can't walk because you're not going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, and never know what you're going to get. Never know what you're going to find.
So you purchased the place. We go through the process, and we were very lucky to be able to get our residency in Italy. And what would you describe as the lifestyle like of living in Italy? So the pros, the cons. Obviously, for our listeners, we live between Dubai and Italy, so we're fake Italian residents.
We're not there. We're not all the time.
But we intend to be, right?
Yeah, but it's quite interesting for us because when we get tired of their lifestyle, we come back to Dubai. So it's not the same as our friends who live there full time. So for us, if it's winter, we have to separate the seasons, right? Winter, it can be challenging if you're not skiing because it gets dark at 3-4 o'clock. So if you like us, need the sunlight and need longer days, it can be quite depressing to be there for too, in my view.
It's brutally cold in winter too,
it's
right? So we're talking about the Apennine Mountains.
Yeah.
And again, just to kind of paint a picture for our listeners, when you get snowed in, you get snowed in properly. What do you do when we get snowed in, Zara?
Well, we have a 4x4.
Yeah.
We need to...
But we can't even get out.
We can get out of the garage with the...
What did you have to do that time when we got snowed in?
We need to walk out or...
you had to call the mayor.
At that time, we had to call the mayor to clear the road so we could get out because we are not part of the main road. So we just couldn't get out of the house. And so skiing is great. That's another thing we didn't know when we got the house was that there's a ski resort just 15 minutes away. And so that's amazing. The food is great if you don't mind putting on some kilos for, 2 or 3 months. Summer is incredible. The vibe is amazing. And like we said before, Pescara, which is the town 40 minutes away by the sea, it's beautiful. And you have the options to just drive to Pescara. It's just always something to do. And, we're out eating, drinking aperitivos. So it's a great life. And then spring and autumn, it's to get that balance. It's not too hot, not too cold. And, what we do, we cook a lot, we go out a lot to eat, we walk a lot, nature walks and treks, and we travel to towns and get to see different towns on the weekends. And we do some work as well, remote. So that's what we do.
Yeah. Speaking of work, if we look at, say, the outside of electricity, gas, water, which was a major challenge, the major challenge for us in the first couple of years was connectivity. So just getting good internet. So for a period of time we had 4G. So we could, you can't actually get fiber, you can't get the internet, you can't even get TV where we are. And interestingly enough, I think regionally around 40% of region, so these kind of rural, semi-rural areas and towns in Italy don't have what we would think of as full internet connectivity. So we had no internet connectivity, so we were really struggling. We had to hash things together, and I had a phone hanging outside the window just to be able to get 4G, to be able to run, Zoom and Google calls. But we actually solved that 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, right? Well, thanks to Elon Musk and thanks to Starlink. And I think that that's actually been one of the biggest drivers of us comfortably going back to Italy more and
Be able to work.
Right? So with Starlink, with the satellites, you can now have blistering not only can you watch Netflix, but you can watch Netflix while I'm on a call.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, of course.
Yeah. And have our kids using the internet at the same time, which was impossible before.
Exactly.
Everyone had to stop using the internet so someone could go on a call.
It was crazy. But coming back to kids as well, like that's one of the things I think neither of us expected was, I have 2 teenagers, your son is 26, that they would also not only be interested, but love to be able to come and to spend time and look at this as a potential heirloom for them to be able to live and have their kids coming to Italy in the future too.
That's very unexpected. That was very unexpected, yeah. So they truly enjoy the lifestyle, the food, and I think it's an escape, right, to all of us to be in that environment.
What do you think they see in Italy? Because, we've done Naples with the kids, we've done Rome, obviously Abruzzo, Pescara. Why do you think the people who should least enjoy it, I would think, would be teenagers, right? What do you think they see in the region?
Thinking about your kids specifically, I think the food, right? The food is amazing, and the culture. I think they understand and they grasp the cultural aspect. That countries like New Zealand, they're so new, don't share the same. There's so much history, right? There's so much that you see in the little towns and in Rome and everywhere you go. There's so much, and I think they just get that and they just enjoy the atmosphere and the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's dripping in history, right? You can just go for a walk on any of the little sort of the tracks, and you can just feel the history. You can feel the past. You can feel, the priests that have walked the tracks and done their pilgrimages as well. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm thinking here. I haven't heard anyone saying I don't like Italy. Who doesn't like Italy? Who doesn't like Italian food? So I think they're really. For them, it's also escape to get away from New Zealand. That's completely different, and just spend some time with us in Italy. It's a farmhouse. It's completely different from everything that they have experienced or my son has experienced. So it's something new and exciting.
So what would be your recommendation to someone who's thinking about, and so, let me kind of put this, let's be very honest, lots of people think about doing things, but very few people do things. So obviously action is the most important thing. But what would be your advice, your practical advice to people who are genuinely thinking about investing? I say investing, but putting some money into Italy and getting a property there. What would be your advice to them to do that?
First of all, the money is usually a lot less than people think. Like I said, you don't buy a property thinking that you're going to get it's an investment, because it's not. But saying that, we did rent a house on Airbnb and we made quite, for a while. It was a good investment. It was a good thing for us to do, and people loved the house. Just do your research, right? And just go for it, because it is complicated but it's not that big of an investment, and it's a great place to be. It's safe. But then you have to really understand what is your purpose, right? You want to have a holiday home, or you want to live there? Do you want a place for your retirement? Choose very carefully the city, the town, because it's not something that you can change your mind in 5 years and sell.
Exactly.
Right? You might plan to do that, but good luck. right, to try and sell it. Yeah, I would say just go for it if that's something that you really want to do, and talk to people who have done it and see different experiences. Go to the place, feel the place, stay there for 2 weeks and really see, because every commune, every town is different. And it's about really feeling if that's the right place for you, talking to the people, see how you feel in the place. We love Rock and Mauritia, and a lot of times we go to other towns and we always say how lucky we are because there's always a vibe, and it's an old town. There's lots of old people, but there's a great vibe, and there's always people on the streets, and it's something that really, it's a good energy. It's a good town. Not all small towns are like that. They're all different. So I would say just go spend some time and really understand what you're looking for, and just go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, given that we bought our place online, and it was sort of a looking back on it, I would reflect that it was a hasty decision, but we had a lot of luck. We had some angels watching over us, and the town was fantastic. And to your point, you know, the culture, the people in the town were fantastic. They've been very welcoming. The house was amazing. We got more than we expected. You know, all of these things, that's probably luck. So mitigate your risk and make your own luck by visiting the towns. Hire a car. Hiring a car in Italy is so cheap, right? Hire a car, drive around some of the kind of lesser known areas. I think the one thing you need to pack in your bags when you're going to Italy is your patience. You know, you have to have patience with your partner, and you have to have patience with the people, right? And I'll be the first to admit, the thing that wears thin the fastest for me when I'm in Italy, even now, is my patience. And, you know, it only takes, we were away recently, we've been away for a couple of months from Dubai. We're spoilt here in Dubai. My patience wears very, very thin at the end of the trips to Italy. And Italy hasn't changed. Abruzzo hasn't changed probably for a few thousand years. It's me, and I get frustrated. So you really have to
Have that mindset.
You do have to have that patience mindset that things are not going to happen
in your way or your pace, or especially comparing to Dubai, right? You cannot expect any of that, and really get into that lifestyle and that pace, and just go with that, because that's how it is. You're not going to change it.
Yeah. So go there, visit the towns. If you're genuinely serious, have a budget in mind. We talked about that. Know what you want, know what you don't want.
Do your research.
I would also add, bring your patience. I would add just another thing as well, which I think is important, is whatever your budget is, let's just pick 100,000 euros, right? If you have 100,000 euros budget to buy a property, have a 50,000 euro, so half it, have another half worth of pot to be able to use for contingencies, right? So things that might come along, legal costs,
or the unexpected
things, leaks in the roof, wall falling down,
paying lawyers,
going through that whole process. So, you know, when you have that little bit of extra buffer, that takes a lot of the pressure away. And it also takes away the time sensitivity of getting things done as well. I use an example. I think there was a period of time where over a year, you and I, we stayed in 86 hotels over a period of 18 months. Mm-hmm. And part of that was around getting the property right and sort of having to travel and having to stay in hotels. So when you have a contingency pot of money, you take some of that pressure out, and you can smile and you can say, look, we have this covered. It's going to be okay. And so that would be kind of my third piece of advice. And the fourth piece of advice is that having a vision and coupling that with some white paint and plaster, you can create pretty much anything on a property in Italy, right? There's a lot you can do. There's super solid houses. Yeah. As long as there's some wiring for electricity, that the water goes to the house and you can get gas, it's surprising what you can make of a property there.
And the other thing that we haven't mentioned is that those little towns are extremely safe, and you can really trust the people. And we have been extremely lucky to find incredible people that have helped us so much. Couple that looks after a house and looks after us. And, you know, if you're lucky to be in that community, they really embrace you and they really look after you. And it's like old times where the community, you know, helps you out and brings you tomatoes and fresh cheese and pasta. So it's really nice. It's like, some of those things that we don't have anymore in the city, in Dubai or any other big city. And it's, I find that precious.
Yeah, it comes back to that point you've raised, safety, right? Like everyone talks about how Dubai's the safest city in the world, and it is, and we cherish it, and it's one of the great things about living here. But then also in Italy, when you go into these rural communities and they are that safe. When we were buying the house, we asked the real estate agent, whether it was safe, and she just laughed at us. And I think she didn't understand the question. She was just like, maybe the last crime in the region was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like that, right?
Yeah. So I find that in my view, it's one of the main things that you want to have. You want to be safe and be in a community like that.